Hey guys, welcome back to Critical Flick. Today I'm going to review The Fabelmans. So, The Fabelmans is the newest film from the legendary director Steven Spielberg, and it is a loosely autobiographical story about his life, how he came to love cinema, how he came to grow up inspired to make films. And I have to say right away, this film is truly a love letter to cinema and the power of cinema, its ability to move people, convince people, kind of shape the narrative of the world around you. I feel like someone like Steven Spielberg being able to create this story is probably the best person to do it. While I say this movie is loosely based around his life, that's because it actually follows the story of a family named the Fabelmans, and the main character being Sammy Fabelman, who is loosely based on Steven Spielberg himself, and it follows his life from the beginnings where he goes to his first movie and he falls in love with the idea of creating films, the magic, what goes on behind the screen. And while the movie is at its core really about cinema and about the power of cinema, it does a really good job of showing family drama and the difficulty of having a family, of being able to balance all these different things, whether it be your personal life, your professional life, maybe your dreams and aspirations, and how those can all come colliding together at times. I think everyone in this film has done a fantastic job. Paul Dano has just had a great 2022. He's probably one of the most underrated actors in my opinion. I feel like people that watch a lot of movies know how good he is, but every time I see him in something, he just really does a fantastic job. But the standout for me is Michelle Williams. She plays the mother in this film, and she's someone who's really struggling with the idea of having to give up your dreams in a certain way, someone who is very deeply sad but trying to hold it together for their family, and she has some of the best moments in the film overall. Seth Rogen also gives a really good dramatic performance, probably the best dramatic performance I've seen from him in many years, so I was really surprised to see him come in as kind of this side character that really helps move the story along. He does a great job in his role. Now, bulk of this movie does take place in the 1960s when Steven Spielberg would have been growing up, so they do a very good job, as you expect of a film from him, doing the production design, all the costuming, the vehicles, everything about Hollywood at that time. It just looks so good and so convincing. This movie overall is just a very beautiful movie. You expect that from him. He has very good attention to detail, make everything look so well shot and well put together. So it's what you expect from him. One thing I will say is the score from John Williams is so well put together for this movie because it isn't overpowering. You feel like when you think of a John Williams score, you think these big, huge cinematic moments. This one has a more subtle touch to it, and it plays along really well with the story. The story as a whole has a lot of heartwarming moments, a lot of ideas of chasing your dreams and not giving up on your dreams, but also some very dark moments, some struggles of family, like I said, and he's able to balance that with the way that his score is put together. And obviously, this movie has a lot of nods to amateur filmmaking, early filmmaking days, and it's great to see some of these aspects that maybe inspired Steven Spielberg and how he kind of grew up. So if you're someone who's a fan of him or a fan of cinema in general, I think you'll really enjoy this movie. I think that people that don't love movies and don't love, in particular, Steven Spielberg or know anything about him might feel a little bit lost with this movie. It is almost 2.5 hours long. It is a long film. And if you're someone who doesn't enjoy the minutia of the behind the camera work, you might not really enjoy it. But I do think if you look below the surface of that, there's a ton of layers to this movie about the personal experience, growing up, coming of age, and the struggle to maintain a family through all that. The movie even does have a cameo from one of my favorite directors of all time. I'm not going to spoil it. It's towards the end of the film, and I think it was a great nod to Spielberg and one of his interactions that is very well documented, how he interacted with one of his favorite directors of all time. The movie does even end in a way with a visual gag, so it's very self-aware of what it is and what it represents in the world of cinema. So I think it does a good job of, getting across Spielberg's story without being too self-serving. Obviously, it's going to be a little self-serving. It's a self-made, autobiographical pick, so it's gonna have that a little bit. But I think he did a good job of skirting that line and giving it a little bit more for everyone else, and not just like his own personal passion project. Obviously, with it being his project, you can see it's a very personal film. It feels very loved in a film that they put a lot of attention to detail and getting these messages across. So it does have that kind of warm feeling to it while you're watching it. But I do love the themes that are presented throughout it. I love the themes of what cinema means. As someone who loves cinema and I feel the power of every time I see a really good movie, this movie is one of those films that helps you understand exactly the point of cinema and the reason it exists and how important it can be. It can be obviously just a big entertainment thing that's consumable, but it can also really touch people, really move people, make people feel a way or think a way. So I think it's interesting to dive into those aspects, and the movie does a good job of exploring those avenues. So if I were to rate The Fabelmans, I would give it a 9 out of 10. I think it's one of the best films of the year so far. Everything comes together to create a really interesting story and compelling tale about cinema and what it means to the world in general, and what it means to one of the best directors of all time. So if you checked it out or you plan on checking it out, let me know what you thought about it. Leave in those comments down below. I always love to hear different opinions. Thanks for watching. Remember to like and subscribe, and see you guys next time.